Jonathan, welcome to the Not So Perfect Couple podcast.
Yay, I'm so excited. Thank you.
We're excited too.
This is the first dating person we've ever had. And I know we're going to talk about your new book, but we always just talk about people that are already in their relationship. So I'm kind of excited to dive a little bit into the dating thing before we go into the new book that you're talking about. So you've been a dating and relationship coach for 10 years.
Yeah.
You weren't always one.
No, before that, I was a corporate insurance broker, making lots of money, living a very egotistical life. And I say that because I was very much, driven by that mantra from the movie Wall Street, greed is good kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a major humbling event after turning 40. I was, my wife filed for divorce. I lost my $250,000 a year job literally months after that. And shortly after that, I got wiped out in the market crash of 2008.
Oh, man, that's a rock bottom year.
Yeah. And it was a very humbling experience. I mean, I even had to move in. I lived in a $2 million home. We sold our home for $2 million in the divorce. And when I got wiped out, I had to move in with my mom and dad, and they lived in a retirement community.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Talk about going from one extreme to another.
Were you old enough to live there at 40?
Well, yeah, interestingly enough, it was an over 50 community. I was like there on the slide.
That's funny.
Wow. So then you, we talked a little bit before the show, but so then you kind of used your drug of choice.
Yeah, interesting enough, my drug of choice was online dating. And what I mean to say is that, I got very addicted to the process of connecting with women. And I say this because there's a twofold thing going on here. I was feeding off the feminine energy, if you will. In other words, that was kind of like my drug of choice, was interacting, feeling that validation for a brief moment.
Mm-hmm.
And then realizing that this isn't right and doing it again and again and again. And in 1 year, I had over 100 internet dates.
Wow.
And each time I'd say, wow, great girl, really nice time, but something wasn't right. Do it again and again. And then finally I realized a year later that the something wasn't right was me. And through the process of dating, not only did I find my passion for what I'm currently doing in my life, because that was really the catalyst for all of it, it also began a deep dive into personal development, self-help, and spirituality.
Yeah.
And which kind of leads me to why I wrote my second book. My first book was about helping women understand men. And my second book is really a platform to encourage a daily practice of personal development, self-help, and spirituality, because I was at such a low point in my life. I went to bed wishing I didn't wake up for quite some months. And now I get up and I look at an ocean view and get excited.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Before we jump into the first book, tell us your top 3 dating tips. If you had 3, you could pick three top dating. And you mostly coach women, is that right?
Yeah, I mostly coach women. So one of the principles that I'll share with, since I talk to women, I say, there's this idea that women would prefer men to lead the dating process. And I always say to my clients, you're giving the job to the wrong person. Men are terrible leaders at a relationship. Now, they're certainly good at being chasers and pursuers of sex. But after that, they have no clue how to really hold the container of a relationship. And I say this because most relationship books are purchased by women, not by men.
True.
So first, be in charge of your relationship destiny.
Mm-hmm.
Is one of my fundamental principles that I work with and talk with my clients. And I think the second thing, and I'm not going to come up with 3, I really want to focus, the second piece is to approach the process with compassion. And why I say that is not just compassion for the other person, but compassion for yourself. Because you guys are a couple. So, and this is a couples broadcast, right? So you're already in relationship. But for those of us that are single, you know, it can be very frustrating. It could be struggling. It could be a challenge. And oftentimes we even turn that around and beat ourselves up. So
Oh,
my
for sure.
invitation is begin with compassion for yourself and then compassion for others as well.
Beautiful.
That's a,
That
actually,
also works very well in relationships when you're in them too.
Yeah, well, I definitely can speak into that as well. But and why I say this is because, you know, a lot of dating coaches all about tricks, how to text message your ex back, what to do when they ghost, and this and that. And I'm done with that kind of crap. I'm
Great.
more
Games.
into, pardon me?
They're
The
games.
Yeah, I'm more into the more interpersonal aspects of connecting with another human being. So this is really about approaching the process almost like couplehood in the beginning. In other words, approach it from that mindset rather than this standoff kind of process of dating that it's currently occurring.
I love
So
that.
after 100, I'm going to back up a teeny bit and come back here. But after 100 online dates, and you realize the only consistent theme in what was wrong was yourself. But you also developed. I mean, so I don't know if you know our story, but we were apart for a year, and I did a bunch of online dating in that year also. And
I tried it a few times too.
but there's a lot of people that are, you know, out there doing the online dating thing that are looking for somebody else to complete them or to, you know, fix them or to
Fill
you
a
know,
hole or
yeah. And there's damage. I mean, some people came out of really just crappy relationships that were emotionally damaging to them, and they want somebody else to fix them. You know, did you run into a lot of that kind of thing, or?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've kind of discovered, both in my journey of writing my second book, but also prior to this, I discovered that dating reveals the #1 emotional health issue facing, I say Americans, but it's probably worldwide. And that is a lack of self-worth,
Yes.
self-esteem, self-confidence. So the idea of dating, there's such a dopamine rush when someone says you're attractive and someone compliments you, and that feeling of getting validation from someone else is incredibly intoxicating. I mean, that's why I said I was addicted to it in the beginning, because I was addicted to the validation.
Mm-hmm.
And what I recognize that many people, and I'm saying the vast majority of people out there, are dating from a premise of filling a hole in their own life.
yeah.
And they're unaware of it. They're truly unaware of it. And so I'm here to be a force to draw more attention to this, because actually habitual dating can cause devastating emotional damage to people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, when you've had one experience that ends and another experience that ends, and you haven't done the work to learn and grow from the experience, sadly, the end result after a decade can really leave a person emotionally empty.
Well, and feeling even less worthy, right? Now you're like, oh, now I'm failing at this thing where I was trying to
Yeah.
fill the hole. And
Yeah.
yeah.
I know that in the first 5 months plus that we were apart, that I was doing the online dating thing and getting set up on dates, I probably wasn't worth a shit. And then when I started working on myself, it was like, there was more of a snowball effect, but that doesn't change it doesn't change everybody else that's out there, but it does help a lot to know that when you're bringing a more complete person to the table.
And can I lean into something you said, Patrick? Because for those listening, they hear the words working on themselves. And I want to just step into that for a second, because working on oneself is recognizing that how often one might be in judgment of another human being, and working on curtailing that, and working on recognizing when you're comparing yourself to other human beings and how unhealthy that is, or where you might lie in resentment for other people, and working and turning that inward, all that inward, into how can you love yourself?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people hear the words working on themselves and they don't really have the tools to do that.
Well, they don't know what it means, right? Like,
Yeah,
what does that mean? Work
exactly.
on myself, like work out, eat better. I mean, those are all
Yeah.
good things too, but I think we're talking about a deeper level here.
Well,
Exactly. And so, go ahead.
I was going to say, I got a really good piece of advice that helped me, and that's, otherwise I probably would have just continued flailing. But the advice I got was, look, you know, you can own if your past bad relationship was 10 years of marriage to her, there's something that you did that got you there also. It's not all on her.
Yes.
So why don't you focus on the parts of yourself that you know you can improve on, so you don't take that same baggage with you into your next relationship.
Taking responsibility is so important.
That's one of the
Step
fundamental.
one.
That's actually one of the fundamental principles in my book. It's take personal responsibility for your choices, and especially the ending of a relationship, because there's always two people involved. And yet, sadly, many people out there in the dating realm are pointing the finger at the other person,
Yeah.
and they're not seeing the three fingers pointing back at themselves. And
Oh, I love that.
That's why I said when I realized that something was wrong with me, that was the moment I took responsibility for my actions. And I'll be candid with you. I showed up very selfish in the beginning of dating, more about getting my own needs met. And when I shifted out of that, it was like, okay, there's another human being here, and just because I was being, for lack of a better word, honest, I wasn't really being honest with other people because I wasn't honest with myself.
Yeah. And there's things that people are, I got tapes and I read a few books and things like that, and there's just a lot of really bad advice about dating and how to find your match and all that stuff, and in that they tell you, don't settle for, so now you've got, I'm not going to settle this time around, and I have this basic checklist of needs and things that I want this person to be. And then you start going out on dates looking for things that they're not. Oh, she's not checking that box, so she's not going to work. She's not checking this box, so she's not going to work. And instead of, what's great about this person, that connection that you were just talking about in the beginning, that's a much better way to approach it.
Well, one of the fundamentals I talk about in the dating realm, and I know you could both appreciate this, is I call it my 4 pillars to a successful relationship. And it's centered around chemistry. So I want you to think of like legs to a table. The first leg is the most obvious one, is chemistry. It's that attraction, that energetic connection, that vibe that you feel with another human being, that ability to communicate in a more symbiotic way. But that's the obvious one. And the other 3 are less obvious for a lot of people, and that is shared values. Do you share your core values? Not all values. Like one of my highest values is punctuality. I'm always on time. I mean, it's like I really get frustrated if I'm not on time. But in the dating realm, I'd be screwed because I've yet to meet a woman who's ever on time for a date. And I meant that jokingly. So it's the core values. The next pillar or leg to the table is blendable lifestyles. Many people are out there dating that have completely, imbalanced lifestyles from one another. And while that occasionally does work, it's really looking for someone whose lifestyle is compatible for yours. And then lastly, and this is the hardest piece, is emotional maturity. And this goes back to what we were just talking about, that does the person take personal responsibility for their choices? Because that's the fundamental piece of an emotionally mature person. Can you, for lack of a better word, fight fair? In other words, do you have good conflict resolution skills? And most people are suffering in this capacity. While they might be mature in paying their bills, but do they have emotional maturity? And that's what I lean into a lot in my coaching practice.
That's good, because I see that as probably lacking in most of the people that I know that I, work with, that I see in the world that are struggling.
I'm working on it.
So, I mean, I'm still too. I mean, it's not like it's a destination. I mean, I still am working on it as well. But I'm really glad you're doing this work. I'm really glad.
You guys are talking about the not so perfect couple, right? What a great example for what we're talking about, because most couples aren't perfectly aligned with one another. And my job is to help you get there as close as you can, because if you're too far apart, like I highly doubt someone who loves Donald Trump is really going to get along with someone who loves Bernie Sanders. I'm just using that as an example.
Well, it's funny you say that.
Is that in your...
I don't know if Pat loves Donald Trump, but he's kind of a Trump supporter, and I like Bernie Sanders.
Whoa. We're not going to, I've never said I was a Trump supporter. All I've said is he's not doing, I mean, it's when you clear away all the garbage between Republican and Democratic infighting, it's the same job. You get the same Republican president, the same Democratic president every time. They just do little teeny tweaks.
Yeah.
It's the same crap every time. So,
and by the way,
perspective,
just let me lead, just because I might have created a hornet's nest here.
No. We can step away. We're joking around because we are very opposite. So we're like the perfect example of making things work because,
and I'm not ready to go on record as a Trump supporter.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, but I just want to say, it's really more, I'm talking about, while there are the opposites, when someone's core values are so radically extreme, chances are they're going to bump heads often. Right. And that's what I'm really leaning into with
What's
that
that
example.
Washington couple, though? There's the one guy, the bald guy.
Yeah, the Carvel and
yeah.
But again,
they got to be an extreme example.
And I'm really talking about the values that represents, not necessarily, and yes, there's always the exception to the rule. Right. But what you want to do is put in the dating realm, you want to put all your, put your chances, put your best odds forward, kind of thing,
Sure.
And just recognize that. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. What's interesting is we released one book and we just released the same book, but with all this scientific evidence. I did all this research about all these different things. And one of the things we said in the book was, because it's true for us and for many of the couples believe this about themselves, is that opposites attract.
Yeah.
And when I did the research, actually, that's not true. Most of the time we're attracted to the things that bring us together, that we have in common. So what you're saying is also supported by scientific evidence that says, you are better off with someone who has many things in common with you, especially those core values.
Yeah. And so, like a lot of times in dating, you could say, oh, I like sushi, me too. You like the Rolling Stones, me too. You like snowboarding, me too. Like, I get that there's going to be those me too kind of things that you might like, but really in relationship, I'm talking about alignment and those core things. Like I said,
honesty.
Well, honesty is a really tricky word because I've yet to meet the person who's 100% honest. So, but are there and really, if I lean into the book, The Four Agreements, that to me is the fundamental piece for choosing how to operate a really healthy life, and one of those is one of the principles is do the best you can. Yeah. Because there's going to be times where you're not honest with yourself. That's why I say honesty is really a tricky word.
That's true.
And everybody wants honesty, integrity, and trust. And to me, those are givens. While there are people that are dishonest, most people are good people. They're just not honest with themselves. That's all.
Yeah.
Oh, I love how you said that. That's such a great perspective. And I love the Four Agreements.
So I want to share something that just occurred to me while we're talking, because this so relates to couplehood and dating. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with John Gottman's work.
Oh, yeah.
So he wrote a fabulous book called 8 Dates. In fact, I'll show it to you guys right here, a picture of it, 8 Dates. And it's the 8 core pieces for a successful relationship. And he encourages couples to go through these 8 dates to see if they're aligned on these things. And why this is such a great book also for brand new relationships is because why not start off on the best platform you can? Literally start dating process from a platform of really, kind of recognizing if two people are a good fit for one another instead of letting chemistry be the driving force, because we know chemistry doesn't lead to relationship success.
Yeah. Ding, 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 because it fades.
I almost think it should be 9 dates, and on the end you can add doing the 5 love languages quiz together. If you decide you want a 9th after the 8th.
I'll tell you what, from a dating perspective, that's one of the first questions I ask a woman if I'm on the phone with her. Like, hey, are you familiar with the 5 love languages? What's yours? Because I was in a relationship with a woman and our love languages were the opposite. And believe me, it was challenging, when we're not speaking each other's language.
Right.
Yeah,
you
definitely.
Speak what you know.
That book helped us a lot too. Yeah, the 5 love languages. We love it. I want to jump into the new book. And, we talked about your rock bottom, but I think you had a different rock bottom.
Yeah.
And that sparked this new book.
So thank you for asking.
And I'm so sorry, by the way, before you even talk about it. Like my heart hurts.
I appreciate it. That's him, by the way, in that picture right there, the top one. Yeah. So for those listening on July 3rd, 2018, I received the worst phone call a parent could ever get. And that is that, well, first I got the phone call that the paramedics were at my ex-wife's house, trying to revive my son, which I believe he had already passed by the time they got there. And then 15 minutes later, I got the call that he had passed away as I was driving over there. And I always, from the moment both my boys were born, and my oldest is Colin, my youngest who passed away is Connor, my greatest fear was something would happen to them, whether it was they drown in a pool, or God forbid they got kidnapped, because that was a big thing about 20 years ago. Or maybe they just lived a struggling life and they were, in jail or something like that. I always had fear. I was always amped up on fear and worry. And in this one moment, every fear I ever had was realized. And it was an interesting experience, because I really thought losing a child would take me down the road of despair that I would never return from. In other words, I would literally be so devastated that I would want to end my own life. I even had that kind of belief before that ever happened. And what shocked me was that this actually became the catalyst for something even more beautiful, because when he passed away, it was interesting. I got all these great signs from him. I had the day I had returned, the next day I'd returned home, and I saw a yellow butterfly. Where I live has this beautiful waterfall and landscaping, and a yellow butterfly started to follow me. And then as I'm leaving my place the next day, a yellow butterfly started to follow me, and I'd never seen butterflies where I live. And then the third day, I live on the third floor, top floor of a complex, and there was a yellow butterfly right out my balcony. And I'm like, that is fucking my son saying, Dad, everything is going to be okay.
Okay.
I'm like, he was literally talking to me from the moment he passed. And so I made the conscious choice to say, while his mortal body isn't here, I have a relationship with his spirit. And I made the choice to say, I'm not going to grieve through suffering. I'm going to grieve through love. And I began to lean into love, like really lean into the word itself. And as I did, 2 months later, I decided to write a book on something that kind of related to my professional life, and that is self-love. And 9 months to the date that he passed, I published my second book called What the Heck is Self-Love Anyway? And it's both a journey of what happened with him and how that's changed my life. And why I'm sharing this with you, as I kind of, the Steve Jobs connect the dots backward. It was when I really got humbled the 10 years earlier, or the 12 years earlier, that I would hit rock bottom and began a journey of personal development, self-help, and spiritual work that prepared me for this chaos, if you will. So it was like a vaccination to chaos. Because there is nothing more chaotic than or at least, I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of other chaotic things, but to me, that was the most devastating thing. And I was prepared for it. And that's why I wanted to write this book, is to help people be prepared, so they don't have to hit rock bottom to still live a fulfilled and happy and peaceful life.
Yeah. That's incredible.
Yeah, sorry, I'm a little that is also my worst fear. It's the only thing I ever really wish for myself, that I get to outlive my kids, so my heart goes out to you.
Your kids get to outlive you.
I mean, yes. Did I say that backwards? Oh shit. Yeah, that my kids
you want to outlive your kids, that's cute.
No, I definitely do not.
And we'll circle back to the greed comment in the beginning.
I just said it backwards. So tell us about the concepts in the book. I love the journey. I love the lean into love through grief. So tell us, because this is something I work on every day. I know Patty works on it, in the book. We joke around in our own book. Pat's like, yeah, this was a chapter I was like, okay, Sam, you got this. I don't really get it.
Interestingly enough, most people, as I said before, most people are good people. They're but oftentimes we're not honest with ourselves. And oftentimes we deflect love outward. In other words, it's like the idea we talked about before, in other words, a lot of times in the dating realm, it's a lot of people are more givers to other people, but they're not givers to themselves.
Agreed.
And so the fundamental principle of the book is the same as when you're on an airplane and the flight attendant says, in the case of cabin pressure change, oxygen mask will drop. And if you're traveling with small children, put the oxygen mask on yourself first. That's the principle of this book, is the oxygen is oxygen of love. And so we all have, we're here we are as adults, but we all have a little kid inside of us that sometimes is scared, sometimes is afraid, sometimes is depressed and sad and all these things. And the idea is for the adult in you is to wrap yourself, that little kid inside of you, with a blanket of love and let you know it's all going to be okay. And so I've created some principles in there to help facilitate that. And so one of the first chapter is called Speak Your Truth, Do It With Kindness. And that is, and I want to differentiate, I want to say truth is speak your feelings.
Mm-hmm.
It's about your feelings, because opinions and perspective, I mean, everybody's got one. So it isn't truth, okay? But your feelings are your truth. And if you're going to share your feelings with someone, do it in a kind, loving way. A lot of times people share their feelings in a very ugly way, or they don't share their feelings at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm encouraging, more of a kinder way to express what you're really feeling and get it out. Because when we get our feelings out, we actually create a greater bond with another human being.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think
And that requires knowing how you feel, which is kind of a whole other, I think I was so shut down. My heart was so shut down for so many years, just from work and what, just life. Life kind of shut me down. I had no emotion. I didn't cry people, when I started crying, people were like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" Because I hadn't cried for years. Like, even as a kid, I didn't cry much. So who knows what that's about? So I've had to try to figure out what I'm feeling. I think a lot of people are confused about what they're feeling to even express. Right? Mine always came out as anger. I was always
okay.
For some of it though, like for me, when we started talking about self-love, she's right. I was like, oh yeah, Sam, we wrote the book together, and I made the joke. Well, you write that chapter, but because she'd worked on herself and that aspect and understood it way more than I did. But just by planting that seed in my head, I guess, how the universe works. When you start thinking about something, everything starts coming full circle. And somebody else a little bit later pointed out that a lot of my humor is self-deprecating, and it's always been that way. And then you start thinking about, well, how do I talk to myself? And you listen, and there is no harsher critic of you than you.
Yeah.
And oftentimes we're like, oh, this guy's going to think I'm the biggest idiot on the planet. And that's just you telling a story about what somebody else is going to think. And they never are as hard on you as you are. So once I was able to, understand how I talked to myself and how I projected myself, I tried to change a few of those things. And then I started understanding it a little bit more and more. And I'm not even close to being all the way there yet. To me, to love yourself absolutely 100% all the way up is akin to like complete enlightenment.
I would piggyback on that, and I'm so glad you brought up that self-critic inside of you. That it's interesting, because self-deprecating humor, while might seem fun, it's so damaging to our core, whether we believe it, whether we realize it or not. And for a lot of people, the word self-love is kind of might be a turnoff. So I like to say self-worth, self-esteem, self-confidence as all inclusive of that. But actually, you brought up the biggest point, is when we criticize ourselves, and everybody does it, it's literally it's like literally putting ourselves on the cross, so to speak, and hammering us to the wood. And that does a lot of damage. So learning how to reframe those words and infuse it with love. In fact, I want to share with you something both. I've been really practicing this idea of waking up every morning with the word love in my consciousness, like literally constantly in my consciousness. Because I think people can go an entire day without thinking of the word love. Just thinking of the word itself. I mean, they might see it on t-shirts, but really leaning into it. And so lately I'm going, how would my life be better if I constantly think of love? Because I can watch the news and think a lot of bad things.
Right.
Yeah, very true.
And there's no love there. And I could watch, no offense, I could watch some reality TV show and there's no love there.
No, you could just talk politics with your neighbor and there's no love there.
Yeah. And so I'm like, how can we talk about love more often? And I know that sounds sappy and woo-woo and everything, but
I love it.
And guys, I've suffered. I mean, not just my mom passed away before my son passed away, my father moved out of the country. I've had a lot of loss. And yet I feel a blanket of love around me because I lean into it every day instead of shy away from it. And as you shared before, Sam, when you're in that state of that low state of it's hard to do that. And for everyone listening, I want to say there's nothing easier than getting out of the pit of despair. There's nothing easy about that. And the motto that got me through it back 10, 12 years ago was something that Walt Disney said: keep moving forward. That was his motto, keep moving forward. And to me, just even tiny little movements forward is the right direction, or is not the better direction, I think, to inner peace. So, I just want to say there is nothing easy when you're in that space, but just keep moving forward.
Yeah. One of the tricks that Sam shared with me, no, she read it somewhere. This is how I read. I read a lot of books by Sam telling me about the ones that she read. But
meaning he doesn't actually read them. I just, give him the synopsis.
I have read a lot of books in my life, but the last 5 or 6 years, Sam's been doing all the heavy lifting. But when I want to come back to that negative self-talk, because that's super hard to get out of.
Well, first you have to hear it, right? Yeah. That's the other thing. Like, it's the awareness of the feelings, the awareness of that other voice in your head, and recognizing that it's in there saying awful things to you all the time. So for me, like, the awareness of it is still like, I have to work on that every day.
But if you can imagine yourself as, I don't know, say like the cutest 4-year-old you that you could possibly be, full of excitement, curiosity, fascination, standing there wide-eyed looking at the world, everything's new and you're just discovering everything, and then you turn around and you tell that kid what you just said to yourself, because you're not going to do it.
Yeah, it's just like what you said, Jonathan, like that little kid inside of you needs love. We're still those little kids. Like, our little spirits are so excited to be here on the planet. I mean, that's my belief, right? They're so excited to experience everything, and then we're just saying nasty, awful things to ourselves.
We go through our first 5 to 6 years of our lives as, in almost perfection, and then society, friends, family, and life just starts tamping all that down. And then,
well, actually, can I share something about that? Because it's actually, that's almost, and not saying to contradict you, because we do start off as love. I mean, as babies, but surprisingly, we suffer a lot of childhood wounds.
Oh yeah.
From parenting, from parents who didn't know how to parent, and their parents didn't know how to parent, and their parents didn't know how to parent. Sadly, how we turn out as adults, and particularly our negative patterns and limiting beliefs, are actually a result of what's happened in the first 7 years of our life. So for those listening, I just want to say, Google childhood wounds if you haven't Googled that before, and start learning where a lot of your patterns of who you are as an adult actually stems from that place. Because you're right, we were perfect as children, and then sadly our parents, messed us up. They didn't mean to do it, just happened. And a lot of times we're having to unwire or rewire what happened in our childhood. So in my book, I talk about childhood wounds, and I put together some resources of how to really work on that area of your life. Because talk about working on yourselves, if we can start from the beginning, we actually can build a better foundation for where we're at today.
Sure.
I think it's so funny how we spend our whole lives kind of like winding this ball of yarn, we're winding it, we're creating this life. And then you hit 40, whatever, you get to midlife and you're like, holy shit, this is all wrong.
Yeah, unwind it.
Fuck, I gotta unwind the whole thing. And so now you spend the
That's
I'll
where I-
spend the
do I
rest
get-
of my day
that's where I was-
unwinding this
that's where I
yarn
was
ball.
That's what I was trying to come around to is that, and you're right. So two things. One, we have a friend named Philip McKernan who, when I quote him all the time on this, he's like, if you have kids and you think that you haven't screwed them up, you're dead wrong. There isn't. I've never met a parent out there who hasn't screwed up their kids in some way. He's like, I'm sure, and he's like, I speak about this stuff, 300 days a year, and I'm pretty sure I've screwed my kids up somehow.
Yeah.
So it's not intentional and malicious. Some people are definitely more ignorant as parents than others. But all I was saying was back to the unwinding the ball of yarn, which is my second point, is that we start off in this place, we tamp it all down, we wind it all up, and then we get to a spot in our lives where hopefully we can turn around, look at it, and go, oh shit, I want to get back to where I started again.
Well, it's interesting. Sadly, it takes a humbling event to shift people, and it's interesting because, and I'm only bringing up a funeral, not my son's funeral, but any funeral, is I go to funerals and I go, I'm not going to waste one more day of my life, because you're at this humbling event. And then oftentimes we go back to our normal pattern 72 hours later. So, but when one has a humbling event, like what happened to me, I lost my job, I lost my money, I lost my family, all those humbling events, it caused me to go inward. Mm-hmm. And so it's sad that it takes that for us to go inward. And yet, if you look throughout history, some of the most amazing people that have ever come out of it have come out of their, sharing their gifts through humbling events. Mm-hmm. So now I think it's better to just recognize that those are just parts of life.
Yeah.
And the journey, you said this a moment ago, midlife. And by the way, I'm called myself a midlife dating coach because I'm talking to people in the 42 to 69-year-old category. Midlife is where the blueprint of where we thought our life was going to be like collides with our reality. Right. And it's like, oh shit, wait a minute. Everything I thought I was going to be is not what's happening. And sadly, the vast majority of people choose a path that continues to take them down a path of pain and suffering. Sometimes they use alcohol as their, or drugs and alcohol as their way of coping mechanism. Mine was dating, which actually ended up being a benefit for me. It really catapulted me in what I'm doing today. But sadly, most people go down the path. And so what I appreciate about your podcast and a lot of these great podcasts and shows are out there is all about empowerment and upliftment.
Right.
And we need to be hearing more about that and not the negativity that oftentimes is so plastered in both social media and the news.
Yeah.
We have a little bit of we have a social media page, and then we have our own Facebook pages, and I think we have an Instagram page.
We do.
Anyway,
yeah.
I don't log into any of them that often. Sam does a lot more than I do. And then as far as it comes to the news, we don't even watch TV. We watch maybe some Netflix or something, but
yeah.
We're very choosy. We're choosy about the garbage we put into our minds.
I don't know if it's intentional. It's just fed up, I think, is a better word for it. In other words, I don't, the Facebook and the social media thing, I have a constant struggle with that because as, I don't want to be called necessarily an influencer. We're just trying to put our stuff out there and hopefully we help, even if we help one person, that's fine with me. But to pay attention to how many likes you got and all that, it just feels like it pulls me down. So,
it's interesting. Instagram just changed their feed now, and it does no longer shows how many likes people can like a post, but it doesn't show the number anymore.
Really?
For that very reason. So it takes away that, I've gotten so many, like you actually have to press the post to see the likes, but nobody else can see it. And Instagram did that for that very same reason, is that, sadly, technology connects us to everyone in the world. I mean, it's a beautiful thing, these little smartphones, it connects us. And it also puts us in amnesia, or can put us in, not amnesia, but
euphoria.
Well, not euphoria. I'm thinking of the negative choice of that word, but in other words, it puts us to sleep, in other words.
Right.
It has this capacity.
Disconnection, I was thinking.
Yes. And so, and I think what you're doing and what I'm doing is here to, help create awakeness, to wake up to the not the dream, but the illusion of this disconnect, and choose to live a life on your own terms, again, with kindness. And my t-shirt says human, what's it
Kind,
say? Human,
be both. That's great.
Yeah.
Be a human and be kind.
Yeah, where do we get those, Jonathan?
This one's on Amazon. So,
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of being kind to yourself and being kind to others.
Yeah. And it's way easier to be kind to others if you're kind to yourself.
Yeah, it's the oxygen mask. You can't put it on someone else unless you put it on yourself first.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And I hear that analogy all the time, but nobody ever takes it farther. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that I start off trying to help Sam put on her oxygen mask and it doesn't work. Now we're both dead. But if I put it on myself first and it doesn't work, I can at least share mine with her.
Yeah. By the way, you brought up something before, Patrick, that I want everyone to maybe hear about. Or it actually was you, Sam. The concept of feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm bringing this back because for those listening, I highly recommend everyone Google a list of feelings.
Oh, this is a great idea.
And not the list of the 7 most common feelings. Actually, there's a list of 100+ feelings out there. And why I want to share this with everyone is start reading about feelings. Because feelings, like, I might be upset that something happened, but the actual feeling is upset, not what happened.
Right.
And, in other words, many people focus on what happened as the feeling. The feeling is sadness. The feeling is upset. The feeling is unhappiness.
Frustration.
Those are our feelings.
Yeah.
Those are our feelings, not the what happened, but what you're actually experiencing. And why this is so important is to begin to pay attention to your feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Because our feelings are fluid. They kind of come and go. There's this expectation that we're supposed to be happy and high all the time. Well, that's bullshit. Now that I know you cursed, I can curse.
Yeah, you can curse. Fuck's one of my favorite words.
We just have the explicit button permanently checked on all of our podcasts.
Yeah.
Okay. So, well, I've been told I can't curse on my next podcast, so I have to practice being.
Oh yeah, get ready.
Yeah. So, but it's really leaning into our feelings are fluid and they're going to come and go, and to recognize that that's going to happen. They're going to come and go.
That's how they're designed, right? They're supposed to flow. Like, the other thing too is like trying to hold on to those to any of the feelings, even the happy. If you try to hold on to the happy too much and you don't let the feelings flow through you, you start getting stuck, and that causes problems.
Isn't it interesting though? People will hold on to negative feelings like for dear life.
Yeah, and you know what? I find myself doing that as well. Like we have a friend who does this technique called releasing, and I love that guy. We have a phone call and he helps me release stuff and it's crazy how much shit I hang on to. Even unconsciously we're doing that. But learning to let emotion flow through you and go through their cycle, well, it's tricky.
Yeah, when you truly, so his concept is basically that when you feel something, it's okay. It doesn't matter what it is. If you feel anger, if you feel pissed, and so a lot of times we'll beat ourselves up for feeling that way. You know what I mean?
Then we're trying so hard to get rid of it that it gets stuck in us, right?
Compartmentalize.
Or ignore it. Or
are you familiar with emotion? Is this emotional release work?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, and there are times when I'll share with your audience, there are times when I do a Facebook, and I do have a big Facebook platform and social media platform. And sometimes I say something that irritates someone and I get attacked.
Right.
Like I get viciously attacked.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes those feelings are like, I'm like, for those you can't see, but I'm literally curling up my body. I go into my bedroom, take out a pillow and just beat the shit out of the pillow just to get rid of the energy that's been stored up.
Yeah, because
so I can come back to a neutrality.
Yeah, and that's how he describes it too, right? Your emotions, they're energy, and they move in different parts of your bodies. And
I like Dave Chappelle's take on that.
Oh, what's his?
Well, he has a comedy stand-up thing that he does. It's one of the 2 newer ones that are out there. But
I want to watch it, but I want to hear this.
There's a lot of people out there that are going to be pissed off about some of the things that I say, but just remember, you clicked on my face.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Oh, and I'll tell you what, on that note, I can't stand people that judge
Right.
someone else when they clicked on that face. You know,
Right.
you came here, you got to accept it, good, bad, ugly.
Yeah. Yeah, and judgment, that's another.
I must have said something that you
another
like, because
one.
there's no way that you're the type of person that would click on somebody's Facebook feed, scroll down, find something they don't like, and then leave a nasty comment. I know you're not that person. That's how you come at it from. Actually, that's condescending love. But
I
Well,
loved it when
that is a little passive aggressive. And
Yeah.
by the way, and that's actually, and I used to do that. I would
Yeah.
reply in a passive aggressive way. Now my thing is, thank you for sharing, sending you light and love.
right.
And interesting enough, the people that are the nastiest are the people that are hurting the most.
exactly.
You know, they don't, and they're not, and oftentimes they're not even aware that they're nasty. And so I've adopted a philosophy, as corny and as woo-woo as it is, I'm doing my best to love myself and everyone else. Good, bad, and the ugly kind
Amen.
of thing.
Me
So,
too.
I just want to ask you a quick question. It's on your first book where it's helping women understand men, right?
Yeah.
Is there a lot of it about, I mean, because I think to a degree, I mean, it's not fair to say that it's men or women, but a lot of men are raised in like the macho, you shouldn't feel, you shouldn't be, or, that kind of
Emotionless.
Yeah.
testosterone driven type environment. And is there a lot of that book? So your second book's about self-love. When you look back at your first book, give me your own critique.
Oh,
For
you
those
know
of
what?
you who can't see him,
I'm
he's
going to tell you
giggling. He's
something.
giggling.
I'm giggling because you nailed it. You know, it's funny. I got interviewed on my first book. I got a writer that called me and wanted to interview me on that book, and he's bringing up a lot of things I brought up in the book, and I'm like, well, I don't agree with that one anymore. I don't agree with that one anymore. I don't agree with that one. And what I mean is, and what I said was these words: I've had a shift in perspective.
Right.
My first book is based on ego and fear. In other words, it's operating from a place of our societal ego and fear-based way of looking at relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I fully own that. And that's where I was at that place in time. And while there's some generalizations and truths in the book, it's not the real platform that I want to speak into, because here's the sad part about men and women, in particular in relationship, is that there's this, I get that we have biological differences. I get that. But we are all spirits and human beings, and we can treat each other with compassion and kindness, not based on masculine energy or feminine energy, and coming at it from a place of, this is a human being, a person, and not a gender. So that's why I'm wearing a t-shirt that says humankind. I'm talking about self-love, because it's really incorporating the traits, for lack of a better word, the masculine, feminine traits within us. And the minute we stop gender divide and treat each other as people, that, at least from a relationship perspective, I suspect, this is my projection, that there's going to be a lot happier relationships out there.
Yeah.
And you don't need to understand men, although sadly that's the conversation I lean into. But what I tell them what they want to hear. Well, I give them what they want to hear, but I tell them what they need, kind of thing.
Sure. Well, it's it goes all the way back to that little kid that wears the Superman costume to kindergarten. He wears it because it makes him feel good. But
yeah,
the easiest thing in the world to do is to make fun of somebody because of their differences. So that's I think that's one of the easiest things. Breathe. I mean.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and yeah, you're so right on, and yet sadly, there's a big divide between men and women, in particular, and obviously in the dating realm, because it's almost like one against the other kind of thing, and in relationship, because I know I'm sure, Patrick, you do a lot of things that are manly, and Sam, you do things that are feminine, all that stuff, and back and forth, but you really, I suspect, have an integrated life where you just treating each other as loving beings to one another. And that's, if we can start from that place, we're going to have a healthier relationships.
Sure.
Yeah. It's funny. So both of our kids are gay, and they've given us a huge education just through their friends. And, we were part of PFLAG for a while, and there was a transgender woman who was giving this speech, and she said something that I thought was so interesting, and it stuck with me, and it reverberates with what you said, which is, it's kind of weird how evolved our culture and our all this technology that we have and all these things, and yet when it comes down to it, we're still dividing people based on whether you have a penis or a vagina. Like,
Yeah.
how does that make any fucking sense? Like, is that really what we come down to, a penis or a vagina? And of course, the transgender community, and we're also finding out, like, sexuality is pretty fluid, right?
It's not
It's
all
not
come down to. There's a lot of other things like big boobs and small boobs.
right. Exactly. Exactly the point.
Hair, no hair.
But isn't it weird that we do that? And instead of just saying, yeah, we're all humans, we all have the privilege of being here on this planet together, and and I'm with you, just, man, love each other.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So to look at me, I'm 6'2". I'm big. I'm outwardly looking alpha male that would kind of be perceived as being more an ego-based type of way of, kind of persona, if you will. And so how's this guy that looks a certain way comes about and talks about love?
It's
And
great.
I say that because I kind
It's
of
great.
laugh at myself at times, and you have to understand who I was 20 years ago was what I'm describing. And now, and I'm grateful, as hard as it is, I'm grateful in one sense for Connor's passing, because it really broke my heart open in a beautiful way.
Mm-hmm.
And while I miss him dearly, and I'll cry in a second, or I could, it broke me open to what's really at least important for me, and my invitation for others is that the light of love can actually bring us so much joy and inner peace when we lean into it. And that's what I want to be a vehicle and a message for.
Yeah, you're so right on. And healing too, like that light of love, it's infinite, and it's magical. That's my experience. That's my spiritual experience with love, and stepping into that as well. You've talked about everything that I want to talk about all the time.
The only thing we haven't
Let's talk about love and light again.
Well, and whether it's dating or couplehood or friends, whatever it is,
yeah,
that's
or friends,
what
or your
matters.
kids, or your anybody people that you work with. I mean, fall in love with the people you work with. Why not? It's going to be better.
The only thing we haven't talked about that I like to talk about all the time is what that love means, because love can be so ambiguous to people, in that it can mean a wide array of things, but I've narrowed it down to one thing. I don't believe that it's way more difficult to love if you're not being present, right? And that goes to what you were talking about earlier, but just keep taking steps forward and that type of a thing. In other words, so if you're looking back, then you're thinking about something that happened in the past that
you're missing your opportunity to love,
hurts you, or but the way to deal with that is to communicate now in the present. So I don't know. To me, that's kind of the meaning, the definition of love and life is presence.
I'm tongue-tied. I'm in so agreement with, and really, it takes. I've learned it's taken me a while to get to a place of being present. Mm-hmm. That's why books like The Power of Now, it's our monkey mind that goes backward or forward, is what does it feel like to be present? Mm-hmm. Is a great example of feeling love. I love that one.
Yeah.
And that's also another one that's incredibly hard to do.
Well, yeah, these all take like awakeness at every moment, right? You fall asleep for a second, you're like, oh God, I missed that moment. Shit.
So I want to share with you something. So I'm recognizing that good or bad, everything in my life happens as an opportunity to love myself. And so
Amen.
Three weeks ago, I threw my back out.
Oh.
And I go, and I could have, and it was a simple lifting of weights, and I could have beat myself up for what I did. And I go, wow, Jonathan, what an interesting way to love yourself this week. And then something else happened. I go, wow, what another interesting way to love myself today kind of thing, or this moment kind of thing. And now I learn, and I'm sharing this because I'm learning to see how every moment is also in a way, is my game in a way. Of my game is how can I choose love in every single moment. Now, I don't want to use the word I fail at it. Believe me, I don't. I
You're
can
not
easily
so you're not so perfect.
exactly. But the minute now that I look at it as a game, in other words, something fun, it shifted my perspective dramatically, because I believe the true miracle in life is choosing love over fear and ego.
Yeah.
Choosing love
Yes.
over that self-criticism, choosing love over self-deprecation, or whatever it is. That to me is the true miracle in life, is how can we shift to love in every single instant and every moment.
Yes, I'm in
So-
violent agreement.
So one of violence, wow.
Well, I'm just trying to make it sound big and important.
Yeah, I like that.
One of my tricks that I've kind of picked up on it is you talk about what an interesting way to love yourself is. When I catch myself like somewhere else, I'm like, whoa. A great example is if somebody cuts you off on the highway, you're like, you son of a, you know what I mean? You're ready to,
Yeah.
and I'm like, whoa, calm down. You've cut people off before. What could you look around and be fascinated? What am I missing right now? Because I'm focusing on that. And I'll just start looking around. I'm like, oh, I never have noticed that before. In other words, just like, what can I be fascinated about right now? And that sometimes pulls me out of it.
Can I give your audience a tool real quick on this one? Because
Yeah.
this is a really big one. So
We'd
we
love it.
talked about, pardon me?
We'd love it.
Okay, so we talked about awareness. Okay, I'm aware I just criticized myself, or I'm aware that I just judged another human being, and you're now aware. What happens is oftentimes most of us don't know what to do with that awareness. So here's my invitation for everyone, and it's called the Hawaiian forgiveness prayer. It's called the Ho'oponopono. And in that moment, when you've judged yourself, and I typically do it when I judge myself, and I'm feeling a little down, I immediately say the following words: I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. I'll repeat that.
Love it.
I love
That's
you, I'm
great.
sorry, please forgive me, thank you. And what that does is the pattern interrupt, because forgiveness, it's called a forgiveness exercise. Forgiveness means forgiving love. In other words, it's for giving love. It's not excusing someone's behavior, excusing yourself. It's a way to just infuse love.
Yeah.
And so I woke up the other morning and I was sad over something. And I'm like, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me. I kept saying it over and over because I was feeling angst. And it helps interrupt the pattern of the angst to shift to something more beautiful, I think.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Sam and I
have a
that.
little bit of a mantra where if I get to where my pattern interrupt is similar, I'm going to start using yours though, especially since it's called the Ho'oponopono. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Mine is I deeply love and accept you.
Aww.
It's kind of the same, but I really like the forgiveness too.
We're big on the
Yeah.
forgiveness thing, in that forgiveness isn't something that's for somebody else. It's for yourself.
Yeah, Brene Brown.
99% of the time. I'm sure we can find a 1% where it's not. But.
Well, and forgiveness always requires some forgiveness of yourself and the other person, no matter what's happening. Because as we know, it's not ever just one. When you're in a relationship, it's both of you. It's both of you.
It's just letting
go. Forgiving love for both of us. All right. We want to be cognizant of your time, even though we've gone over a little bit.
I could talk for another.
I know, by the way, I'm so digging this. I could talk until my next appointment a couple hours later.
Yeah.
We could.
I dig the two of you, by the way. You two are very cool peeps.
Oh, Jonathan, I was just going to say you're a beautiful human, and I'm so happy to have the privilege of meeting you and having you on our podcast. We want to give you a minute for shameless promotion. Just tell us where people can find you. Tell us again your book, all your social media stuff. Like, give it all to us so people
can I give your audience a gift real quick?
Oh my God, yes, of course.
Okay, if it's in the show notes or not. So I've got a couple chapters in my book called What the Heck is Self-Love Anyway? I'd like to give that to your audience. And certainly they can go to my website, jonathanaslay.com. My book is on Amazon, so you can Google that. I'm on social media. And I was going to say, I have a platform called Midlife Love Mastery that is really about doing a deeper dive where I actually connect with my audience every day. I interact, I ask questions, and I literally only charge $20 a month to be a part of a group.
Wow.
You get access to me on a daily basis, and I do a webinar once a month where it's a live Q&A. And I've got so many backlog webinars and videos that my goal is to really infuse a lot of love in all our lives.
Nice. Well, we'll sign up.
Yep. I need
Thank you.
anybody that can infuse more love. I think that's also what we're trying to do here, even though, we talk about, there's a lot of stuff that happens around that, but the core of it is really trying to teach people about love and how to love and get better at loving in
Yeah.
ourselves as well, right? Like we're doing this
Yeah.
for ourselves too.
Yeah.
In the back of our book, we write that we think love is the meaning of life, and that if it starts with yourself, and then to the people the most immediate around you, and then it'll spill out to your neighbors, to your community, to the city, to
Hopefully
the
the
country,
world.
and hopefully
Yeah.
inevitably the world. So start right here.
I love that. I got to write that. Love is the meaning of life. I not heard that before. That so resonates with me.
Yeah.
Jonathan, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much.
It's been a beautiful
you.
conversation, and I've loved every minute of it.
Likewise. Big hugs to you both.
You too.